The lawyer stopped mid-page.
The true owner of these properties is Mrs. Ellen West.
The pen slipped from Dorothea's hand. For the first time in 30 years, those eyes, the ones that had always looked down at her daughter-in-law, began to tremble. To reach that moment, Ellen had a story no one knew about. Let's go back to where it all began. Every Thanksgiving morning, Ellen was up by 5 o'clock. While the rest of the house still slept, she stood alone in the kitchen preheating the oven, trimming fresh herbs, polishing the silverware one piece at a time. For 30 years, without a single exception, that morning was no different. November frost had settled white across the lawn outside the window. Crystal glasses stood in a neat row on the mahogany table. Ellen's hands moved from one cloth napkin to the next, folding each one precisely. They were the hands of a woman past 70, but every movement was exact. Footsteps on the stairs didn't come until well past 9. Dorothea Harper, 75 years old. Pearl necklace, cashmere cardigan, every strand of white hair perfectly set. She stepped into the kitchen doorway and opened the refrigerator. She asked about the cranberry sauce and reminded Ellen that Mrs. Margaret had something to say last year when they used the canned kind. Ellen told her she had made it from scratch. Second shelf. Dorothea took out the glass jar and held it up to the light. She gave a small nod, but she said nothing more. It probably never occurred to her that a compliment was in order. In the world Dorothea had grown up in, a good daughter-in-law was one who kept moving. And sitting at the table was for guests. At least, she believed that with complete conviction. By 3 o'clock, the house was full. Dorothea's bridge club friends, Robert's business colleagues, the neighbors from down the street. Laughter filled the living room, and crystal wine glasses clinked against each other. Robert Harper sat at the end of the sofa, holding his glass. 73 years old, gray sweater vest. His face was warm, but he looked tired somewhere underneath it all. A colleague told him his instincts were always sharp. Something about a vineyard investment. Robert waved it off. Just luck, he said. Then he added quietly that what he really wanted someday was to do something for veterans. Build a proper support center. The room laughed. They smiled the way people smile when they hear something that sounds just like the person they're listening to. At that moment, Robert's gaze drifted toward the kitchen. Ellen was coming into the living room with a tray, passing canapés around one by one. Not a single person made eye contact with her. From the sofa, without turning her head from the guests, Dorothea said Ellen that Mrs. Margaret's glass was empty. Ellen picked up the wine bottle, walked over, filled the glass quietly, and returned to the kitchen. Sitting at the table was for guests. Ellen had accepted that fact a long time ago. Or perhaps she had only been pretending to. The dishes weren't done until past 10 o'clock. 12 sets of dinner plates. 12 wine glasses. 12 coffee cups. The sink was clean again, and the counter held nothing. From the living room, laughter still drifted through. Ellen opened the back door and stepped outside. The cold November air swept across her face. She breathed in deeply. Above her, the sky was full of stars. She pulled a worn notebook from her coat pocket. The leather cover was rubbed thin with use, but it was still tied shut firmly. Inside columns of numbers, rental income records, donation entries, trust account balances. Ellen West had another life that no one knew about. A life she had never once spoken aloud for 30 years. The back door opened. It was Robert. He asked what she was doing out there, said it was cold. Ellen slipped the notebook back into her pocket. Just getting some air, she said. Robert came and stood beside her. A silence passed between them. He told her he was grateful for today. That without her, his mother would have. Ellen said it was fine. He told her it wasn't. He said he knew that. He took her hand. It was cold. Ellen nodded, but didn't move. She looked up at the star-filled sky for a long time. Robert was a good man. But sometimes, being good isn't enough. That night, Ellen took an old envelope from the nightstand drawer. The words, "Trust Agreement," were faintly written on the front. It was a document she had signed herself in 1994. 2 months before the wedding. Robert stirred in his sleep and asked what she was doing. "Nothing," she said. "Go back to sleep." She slid the envelope deep into the drawer and turned off the light. In the darkness, Ellen lay still for a long time, staring at the ceiling. She didn't close her eyes. Robert Harper passed away 14 days after Thanksgiving. A heart attack. At 3 in the morning, while he was asleep. The church was filled to the last pew. The flag was draped over the casket. Dorothea sat in the front row. Black veil, handkerchief, red-rimmed eyes. But no tears fell. Ellen sat beside her. Her hands rested neatly on her lap. The pastor said Robert Harper was a good husband, a good son, and a man who loved his community. Ellen's gaze moved to the casket. Her lips moved silently. No one could tell what she was saying. A week after Robert was gone, Attorney David Chen's office was quiet. A few autumn leaves drifted past the window in the wind. Heavy law books lined the shelves from floor to ceiling. Dorothea sat in the chair across from the desk. Handbag on her lap. Back perfectly straight. Ellen sat beside her quietly. The attorney said they were gathered today for the reading of Robert Harper's will. Dorothea reached for a pen and said they could start with the list of assets. She had a lot of things to sort out. The attorney turned a page and stopped. He said there was something to confirm first. He turned to Ellen. 432 Maple Street. 1840 Oak Avenue. 2156 Park Drive. Did those addresses mean anything to her? Yes, Ellen said. Dorothea frowned and asked why. Weren't those the buildings Robert had invested in? The attorney said actually, no. A long silence settled over the room. The pen slipped from Dorothea's hand. The sound of it hitting the floor rang out sharper than it should have. The attorney said these properties have always belonged to Mrs. Ellen West. She inherited them from her father before the marriage, in 1994. And has been managing them through a trust ever since. Dorothea's voice cracked as she said that couldn't be right. She had seen it herself. She had watched Robert sign the contracts. The attorney explained that Robert had handled the management of the buildings. Ownership had always been with Mrs. West, from the very beginning. Dorothea turned and stared at Ellen. Her eyes were a storm of confusion and fury. She asked if Ellen had known. From the very beginning? Yes, Ellen said. Dorothea asked why she had never said anything. Ellen thought for a moment. Then, quietly and steadily, there was no reason to. Dorothea couldn't look at her daughter-in-law for a long time after that. Her gaze drifted to the window. A single maple leaf floated slowly down to the ground, and she watched it fall for a very long time. For 30 years, Dorothea Harper had looked down at her daughter-in-law. Now, she no longer knew where to look. In 1994, Ellen's father had left her 3 buildings. She had placed them quietly into a trust. Most of the monthly rental income was set aside for causes she believed in. A portion was kept as a reserve. Robert had never known. The mansion where Dorothea lived, the building where Robert's business had proudly operated, all of it had always been Ellen's. The truth was, she had never been indifferent to money. She had simply been someone who knew how to handle it quietly. And for a very long time. That evening, Ellen stood by the window of her small apartment. Outside, people were making their way home from work. A couple walking together. A child on a bicycle. Raindrops began to tap, one by one, against the glass. Her phone rang. The screen read Dorothea. Ellen did not answer. The ringing stopped. A moment later, a message came through.
We need to meet.
Ellen looked at the screen for a long time. Outside, the rain was getting heavier. What she would choose to do no one knew yet. The story continues in part 2. If you'd like to stay with us for the rest of Ellen's journey, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for listening.